Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining us today. We have a special guest today, Joey Pagano, my man. Joey, this is your second time on the show. You were here with Kelly McKevitt.
Yes.
Early on, over in Menneson at his place when we first started. And when we were talking about that during that show, you had mentioned that you were writing a book.
Mm-hmm.
And you said you'd follow up. Would I have you back? And we said, absolutely. And you did that. And here we are. The book's about to publish. It's called No Addict Left Behind. And we're going to get into that pretty deep here in a little bit. But just for the sake of just bringing our audience back up to speed, because we've come a long way since that first show. We've got a little bit of a different audience and a bigger audience. So kind of talk about your journey. You're a Charleroi guy, and we're sitting here, by the way, at Club Serenity, which is really cool. What a great place, and such a valuable asset to this community, of all communities, this community in particular. But it was a great suggestion coming here. Club Serenity right in downtown Charleroi. What a great place, and very welcoming. But thank you for that. So your journey started here in Charleroi, and your family had a thriving business here in town. I mean, like I think I told you, I don't know that I ever got shoes anywhere else but Pagano's shoe store. Your pap and your dad were, always good to me. I've known them pretty much my entire life. And so normal childhood upbringing, this was a great place to be a kid. Really, I grew up here. And then you went to the military, right?
Yeah, I went to the military, spent 2 years there, and I got kicked out because I just couldn't stop using drugs, and I didn't even realize I was an addict or I knew anything about recovery at that time.
Had you gotten into drugs before you went into the military? Is that something you picked up there?
A little bit before that. I say I started using substances, we'll say, like with the normal alcohol and just partying with friends where it was fun. Right. I started that about a little after 16 years old, like right around there. So, it's kind of late compared to how it is now, but that's when I started.
Wow. Interesting. So you get busted out of the military, Army, right?
Yes.
You busted out of the Army and you come back here, you come back home, and things escalated from there.
Yeah. And just thinking about just how I got, thrown out of the Army, and how it happened. I got just labeled that junkie and not knowing what recovery, what an addict, any of that stuff was, thinking I had a moral dilemma. And what they did, see, the stigma of addiction was so thick in the military at that time, back in 92 to 94, they took me to the edge of the base, right? I'm right on I-5, right out by Seattle, and they just left me there. And so I had to walk. I'm 20 years old, not knowing any of this stuff. And it was just like, and I just remember that last conversation. They said, listen, junkie. And it rings true. And I just had to walk 30 miles around that, I'd say, to Seattle, where the airport was, from Fort Lewis, Washington. Yeah. And I found myself back in Charleroi, and
they just took you outside the fence and dumped you.
That's it.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'll never, you have some memories that you could never, get rid of. And I'll just never forget that moment, because sometimes stigma just cuts so deep. And that wound was just, it wasn't healed by the time I got back to PA.
So coming back to Charleroi, and it was tough then. Charleroi was rough. I mean, we've had our struggles here in this community, but it's still home.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So
you came home, and I would guess that you struggled finding a job and getting into different things, and that's a breeding ground for addiction, for drug abuse. I mean, it really is, because you get that feeling very quickly of hopelessness.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. I mean, there was no hope. Like I said, I'm back in PA, and I have no idea what I am. Addiction was something, well, maybe if I used a little different, I wouldn't have got kicked out of the military. But I'm back in this.
Did you carry that label, that junkie label, with you when you came back?
Yes.
Yes. Is that something that hit you?
It's like a scarlet letter, and when you get thrown out with a general with other than honorable conditions discharge, it is that scarlet letter. So I get that discharge. I'm a junkie. I'm just not using right, because I don't know what an addict is, and I don't know what any of that stuff is. And I don't know, Jim, any way out, and I'm hopeless, and I'm helpless, and I'm here in PA and just clinging on to anybody that will give me hope.
It's a dark place to be.
for years and years. And I stayed in that and lived in that and just couldn't get out there.
Because the only hope, right? The only hope came from that community.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that community of addiction, of addicts and junkies. Well, I hate to use that word, but still, I mean, that's where a lot of times you can't break that cycle, because that's where you get hope. That's where you get support.
Yes.
It's from but it's just like anything else. If you have a bad habit and you want to break that habit, you don't go hang around with people who have the same habit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It becomes a vicious cycle that you can't break.
Yeah. And I was stuck. And like I always say that, like, hell, and this is like how my life was. Hell wasn't just a place I could go. It's what I carried around with me for at least 21 years. I'm stuck in addiction for 21 years. And it took me, a long time to realize that there was any way out. There was, that there was any other path than just spiraling out into the storm of addiction, and when you include, you have addiction, you have mental health, you have stigma, you have the dogma. When I talk about dogma, I think of a rigid, unbending doctrine. Joey,
Sure.
you need to do it this way.
Right.
This way, you're not good unless it's this way. So when you combine all that, right, and like I said, you have a perfect storm.
Yeah, it's heavy
For addiction, and I was lost.
That's that's probably the darkest place that we as humans can ever find ourselves, in that dark, lonely place where you see nowhere else to go. I mean, I've been there. I relate. You described that very eloquently just now, because different thing put me there, but I was there nonetheless, right? And we had just talked about, addiction comes in a lot of forms. Right, it comes in a lot of different forms. It's not necessarily a pill or a needle, or a powder up your. It's a lot of different things. And do you think that, you hear a lot about gateway drugs, right? So there are some things. They're not too bad. They're not too bad. Smoking marijuana. Having a few beers, doing this. How do you see that as? Do you think that doing that when you were young, because we all did it. I mean, we were able to get served in bars here at 16 years old back in the day, right? I mean, it's like, so you just went in hoping on your buddy's dads were in there, having a beer. So, but do you think that opened that door for a bigger, more serious addiction?
I think it partly did. I mean, like I look at myself and I have kind of, my perspective has changed from when I was a kid and I was doing all that, to then when I evolved and maybe coming back from the Army, to where, in my professional career, of how I look at it now and how I looked at it back then was, it definitely was, right? Because I was looking for anything to get out of me, right? I had that perfect storm, Jim, of, like I said, I've gotten diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, all that stuff coming up. And then you have all this mental illness, anxiety,
all at the same time.
And addictions there. And, I come from a town, right? We were here in the magic city of Charleroi, where addiction is still frowned upon. This is a time where I remember my mom, she says, hey, we used to have the neighborhood addict. And it wasn't addicts, plural, right? It was singular. There was someone. So
now, when you mention Charleroi anywhere in Western Pennsylvania, the first thing that comes out of anybody's mouth is drugs.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the first. That's what people perceive us here as.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. Addiction has taken over the city,
right.
But like it was a time where there was just, I'm sure there was more, but how a lot of people looked at it was there was just a neighborhood addict. And as that evolved, right, marijuana was okay then, right?
Yeah.
And like I even though the seeds of addiction were planted, like I says, all that perfect storm, that stuff I mentioned, cultivated addiction. It cultivated me, and it just bred me into who I became. And I just wanted to be okay with Joe. Right. I come from a good family with literally lives across the street from this club. I mean, they're very, very authoritarian, and how they parent and everything. And they're a good family. But like I said, it's like all that stuff it was just a perfect storm.
Right.
And, I found myself as a junkie, right? As I got labeled in by a drill sergeant, and how I got labeled by so many other people, but I didn't know what a junkie was. And it's a big issue when you don't know what recovery is.
Right.
It's just like when someone gets cancer, like, and they get diagnosed, it might be a bad thing, but they're happy to just know
But
what's
there's a
wrong with them.
diagnosis.
But when you're
it's
the
a thing.
yeah,
Right.
when you're the undiagnosed addict,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, it's just you're walking around, hurting yourself and slowly committing suicide, and you don't know why you're doing it.
Yeah, you're
You
just
don't know
dying
anything.
inside. Did you try to run from that label?
Yeah. And that's why, like, when they gave me the exit in the Army, I'm already feeling like as low as I've ever been in my life.
Right.
Just like all the labels, getting bullied in high school, like I said, the Army, all the different places, I've always ran because I don't want to be in that dark corner no more.
Sure.
And the stigma just cuts so deep. And there's so many different levels of stigma, right? It happens in so many areas of our world. But I says it's all the same. It's just a scar just heals the same. And I was this junkie, and I don't know anything about recovery.
Right.
And just imagine just being there and just thinking there's no way out. And like a guy with no hope, a person without no hope, you're in some trouble.
You're in some trouble, and that's a dangerous person.
Yeah, and that's where I was at.
And I want to talk about your journey, how you found recovery and started to understand what that was. But I want you told me a story a few minutes ago just before we started to film, about when you got to the point where you came to your end day. Okay. Tell that story if you don't mind, because I want to really frame exactly where you were, how hopeless and desperate, what that felt like. And you tell it very well, so that then we can get into the recovery piece and this club and how that all played in together.
Well, it was, and I just love telling this story, Jim, because it stays right in my heart, and I can never forget that, and like I said, it happened literally across the street from where we're at, and that's why it's just so emotional. So I woke up this one morning, and I was somehow staying at my parents'. They had it with me, and to see the disease of addiction is like a drill sergeant, and it just wakes me up. And Joey, get up, and I just listen, and I suited up. I put my uniform on, and that's just how I saluted the disease, and I just said, "Yes, sir." And I marched out of the house. And I didn't want to be dope sick. When we think of dope sick, we think of opiate withdrawal in the clinical world. But it's just, I didn't want to be sick and have those, the shakes and all the different symptoms. And I just didn't want that anymore. And it was like the left side of my brain was trying to sell me an idea, and the right side of my brain was trying to buy it. Right. And I marched out of that house, Jim. And I just had to get another one. If I could just get another one and not be sick, please. And I was just yelling to God, just please kill me. I can't take it another day, right? I can't take it no more. Please kill me. But I didn't die. I just kept marching, and I kept marching for the disease, and it had me going there. And I remember, in Charleroi, right? And we're talking about a town, right, that everybody knows everybody's name. But the disease of addiction had me.
It's typical small town America.
Yeah. And it just had me just thinking that nobody knows you. And I put my hood on. And that's why the cover of my book has a hood on, because I always felt safe with that hood. And when I wore my hoodie, you didn't know who I was.
Gives you that little bit of anonymity. Yeah.
I did. And I marched down, and
I get it.
And I had no money. I didn't know what to do. And I just, I was scared. I was shaking. I was sweating, and I just wanted to die. And the disease says, no, Joey, you need to march in that gas station, and you need to go get money. You're not going to be sick today. Yes, sir. Right? Yes, sir. And I marched in there, and I robbed them. I didn't have a weapon or anything. I robbed them and took money, and I ran out. And I said, listen, I'm dying today. Nothing's going to matter. I need to kill myself. And I felt like this was the day before I'm going to die, And I marched down, and I walked down Fallowfield, right? We walked down the main street, and I found myself across the street from the police station, of all places. And I sat down on the sidewalk. And I looked down, and I somehow had a phone at this time. And I got the phone, and I called my mom. And I said, Mom, I'm so sorry. I said, I failed you. Please just tell Dad I'm sorry, and tell my son that I love him. And I just wish I could have just I wish I could have did better. And she's screaming, she's crying, right? And I can't tell dad that, and I just didn't want to be on the phone with her anymore
Mm-hmm.
because tears are going down and I can't take it anymore. And maybe if I just die, or just maybe I waited out, kill myself tomorrow. And I didn't know what to do. And I said, I got to go. And she's screaming. I'll never forget, as I put the phone down, that scream echoed and the phone went down and I put my head down. And I remember I just didn't know what to do, and I gave myself a couple seconds, and I tried to just, maybe I prayed, and my mind was going a million miles a minute, and the next thing I know, and instead of leaving, as I always run, and I always just think that's the answer, I felt a power not on my own, Jim,
Mm-hmm.
and I got carried across the street. I felt, and I walked in the side entrance of the police station, and I seen Chief Eric at the time, and I seen the detective, and might have been Chad. I can't remember who it was. And I said, I'm sorry, man. I said, this is the day before I die. I literally told them, I said, I just committed that crime. I says, if you don't take me now, I said, it's going to be worse. And, I remember him handcuffing me, and like Eric just putting his arms around me, like he was hugging me
Mm-hmm.
in some capacity. And like, it's going to be okay, Joey. They knew I was using, and
Yeah. Eric's such a compassionate dude.
He is.
And I mean, he was probably the perfect small town police officer, police chief.
He was like a divine appointment. He was like,
Mm-hmm.
He helped carry me
Because
to
in
like
that
another
moment, he
level.
didn't treat you like a junkie.
He didn't, and he didn't call me a junkie.
Right.
He said it's
He
going
treated
to
you
be
like
okay.
a human being. Yes. And what did he
Hmm.
give you? What did he give you in that moment, brother?
He gave me a hug,
And he gave you hope.
and he gave me hope. And right at that moment, I was able to quit busy, just quit getting busy dying, and just getting busy living.
See,
My life
that is so
changed.
powerful. And, there are going to be a lot of people that can't relate to that. And they might think, that's a cheesy story, blah, 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 right? But this is real life.
Yeah.
Okay. And you can see sitting next to you, and I'm sure it'll come across on the camera, but sitting here next to you, this was powerful. And you feel that. I mean, that's
Yeah.
real for you. That came right
Yeah.
from here.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you're at that point, all right, then did you do time for that?
Yes. And I did time. I did it several years, and I did some drug programs in there.
Okay.
And I just tried to give me a break, give
Mhm.
Joey a break. He needed a break,
Sure.
and that's what I did. And I reflected in there.
Second chances, brother.
Yeah.
And
And I found myself, getting out, and I'm out of prison, and I have to make a decision. Like, it's like, what do I do? Do I go back to the streets? Do I find some normalcy? What do I do? And
Mhm.
I chose to get busy living. I chose to just fight the disease of addiction head on. I chose to just make a difference, because I knew that if I didn't stay excited about recovery, that the
Mhm.
disease of addiction was excited about me.
Right. And you mentioned your son a little bit ago, and he was a little guy at this time,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you feel that? Have you thought how he saw you and sees you now?
Well, the thing is my son, and like I said, there's actually a chapter in my book named this, because it's such a long story of that. I abandoned my son in addiction, and my son's name is Xavier, and he's 18, and I still actually don't see him yet. And that was
Okay.
another reason why I started to write my book, because I'm going to hand him one of my books,
Okay.
and so he could see part of his story. But in all this collateral damage from addiction with my son, and my parents ended up, and like I said, it's a long story, but my parents adopted, at the time, a 6-year-old,
Mhm.
and my son's name is Xavier, and my brother's name is Xavier, and he came in my life, and he became not just a brother but a best friend. So he taught me. You're coming out of addiction, right? You're coming out of jail and all that.
Right.
You abandon your son. Like, I was scared. I wanted to
Sure.
be a dad.
Sure.
But my little brother taught me to be a dad. And he taught me, he's like, you're not just a good brother. You're going to be a good dad at 8 years old. So he taught me and paved the way for that relationship to just open for me. And now I'm in the beginning stages of opening that relationship with my son because of a brother. that like I says, that my parents adopted through some collateral damage of addiction. But he was that divine appointment that carried me through some dark times.
Right.
You know?
Right. That's powerful stuff. It really is. And so your journey from that point, from prison, from being at your literal end day to where you are today. That's a long journey. That's not something that happened overnight. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, a lot of scrapes and bruises, right? So, did you relapse in there? Was it a smooth trajectory on that journey, or did you have stumbles? Did you get bogged down in the mud? You know what I mean? I would not think that would be an easy path to walk.
It wasn't. And you know what? I've been clean ever since, and I stay clean. But what has helped me, one of the pivotal things is, I have a good friend, Lee Roberts, and he always used to tell me, right, don't get nervous, get in service. And you know what, like some of out the gate, I got into service, right? It was like a week after just getting out of jail and getting, assimilated back in normalcy of every day. And I said, listen, I got to do something. I got to make a difference. I found myself getting a job and then making a relationship with Mark St. Cyr at Club Serenity. And, I remember at the bank one day and just talking, and he kind of like talked me into becoming the president at this facility. And we were only like a small little club. It was a beat down club. Sure. We had a slumlord of some sort.
You're right up the street here, right?
Yeah. It was not a good place. Right.
Right.
And
I remember.
We're just trying to make a difference.
Sure.
And I have a Dodge Dart, right? I got this red Dodge Dart, and anybody that was using in 2013 to 2016, I was the last person you wanted to see. I mean, just imagine you have a red Dodge Dart with a huge Phoenix decal coming on the car and these hands on the hood. And I'm like this recovery cowboy, right? I'm just driving around with the recovery mobile. And if you were doing the wrong things in town, you don't want to see me. Yeah. Because I'm going to stop you. Oh, we don't want to see this guy. He's going to talk us into treatment. And I would load up the car. Listen, you need treatment? All right, let's go.
Let's go.
Right? Let's go. And like I says, I'm taking people to treatment. I'm being of service. I'm the president of Club Serenity because I got talked into that. Yeah. Lee jumps on board. Lee becomes the vice president, right? It's all these other pivotal people on the board. Mindy McCloy jumps on board. My soon-to-be wife. She was Jody Kogut at the time from Monongahela. She's Joey Pagano, of course, now. Like all these people jump on board, and we're I'm telling you what, it was like a Wild West. We're the recovery cowboys. We're making a difference. And then I had a conversation one day with Lee, and I said, listen, we got to make a difference. We need recovery houses in this valley. We got to have it, right? And it was like I'm a social worker by trade, but I didn't know this at the time. And this is what, the social worker in me. It's just like understanding that like, it's hard to stay clean when people are coming out of treatment and they're coming back to the same place they got high in and their parents used and their grandparents used. Right. Well, I said, listen, we need facilities. We need houses. And I said, Lee, I don't know what we need. This town needs something. He said, Joey, this town needs something. And you might be the something they need.
There you go.
And where it happens next.
Well, and listen, here's the thing, and this is I love this because you go from telling your mother that you're ending your life to prison to all these things, this long road to recovery. Oh, and by the way, while you're doing all that, you went up the river to college, got yourself a degree, became a social worker, and you started working with the very same people that helped you.
Yeah, and those are amazing. Like there's just so many amazing stories.
I mean, that's incredible in itself. Recovery from the depth of addiction that you were in, that's a full-time gig in itself. Right?
Yes.
And you got all these things going on. You've got the Club Serenity. You and Lee are in the middle of doing all this stuff. And Lee's a good dude too, by the way. Listen, you guys, local guys, Mon Valley guys, Charleroy guys, right? Which I love, right? Because this, I haven't lived here in a long time, but this is my home. I grew up here, born and raised. This is my town. And when I see the passion that the two of you have for the most needy and the I don't want to say weakest, but you know what I mean? The most vulnerable of our population, of our fellow humans,
Yes.
right? You guys see that need. And while you're trying to save yourself, you're doing all these things, getting a college degree. Dude.
Listen, I barely graduated high school. I just like pretty much shuffled along through that. And it was like a formality.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that I didn't like school at that time. But like a lot of things that I'm telling you, these doors of opportunity open in our life. And if we have the faith and the trust to walk through them, then miracles happen.
Right.
See, and you talk about that, me working at an agency. We're talking about an agency where I was a client and couldn't get clean at. We're talking at Southwestern Pennsylvania Human Services, SPHS. I was Joey can't get right? I can't stay clean.
Yeah.
And they would just kick me out and all this stuff, but they didn't give up on me.
Sure.
And that's the biggest theme about my whole life. No one gives up on me.
It's a great
fully.
group of people over there. And you know, you've been blessed by this journey. Everything you're saying, everything that you're talking about is a blessing. You know, you would not be who you are today. You would not be the blessing to this community and to this area that you are today had all of these things not happened for you.
Yes.
Not to you, but for you.
I agree 100%. And it's just like, it's hard to see those things, Jim, when they're happening. And then it's hard to like trust and just to walk through when these opportunities happen and not worry about someone else's opportunity and maybe not hate on someone else because that's not but to be able in your season of life, when your perspective changes, to walk through that miracle. Because that's what this stuff was. It was just miracles happen.
Yeah.
And God was doing for me. And that's so true. Listen, the same place we're in, I remember when I'm this recovery cowboy, and I said, listen, I couldn't conceptualize anything past Club Serenity. And I couldn't see that my life was being pushed in a different season. And you know, these two ladies called me, Cheryl Emila and Rita Nichols. They were executives at the time of the Center of Excellence. I was like, what is this? They want to make an appointment with me. Why do they want to talk to me? So we got an appointment. I was there. I think Lee might have been there. Mark might have been there. And so they come in my office, right? And I was the president. It was it was 512 Fallowfield. And I remember they're like, listen, Joey, we know what you're doing and we're watching you. Why don't you come work for us and we'll pay you? And I says, I don't want paid. And I fought them. I says, listen, I want to keep doing what I'm doing. I says, you know, Joey, listen, we want to pay you. And I remember saying no at the time, and I walked outside the office.
So after all that,
they left.
You get offered
I
a
fought
job,
them.
doing what you've come to love, your passion, your purpose, and you said no.
I said no, and then I walked out. I walked out, awesome. And I looked up. I'll never forget it. We have a little sign outside in the hall. It says "Expect a miracle." It's still there, and I said, maybe the miracle's me. And at that moment, I decided to work for SPHS. And, you know, it's been, you know, memory after memory. You know, I went from intensive outpatient client to now, you know, project supervisor of the entire Center of Excellence, you know, in Waynesburg right now, to now just saving lives and working in the trenches and getting paid. And
you didn't stop at the undergrad degree. You got a master's degree.
I didn't.
You got a master's. You got a master's. And now you tell me you're going for a doctorate now.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Dude, you have been blessed beyond words. I mean, you really have, because you can't sit here and look me in the eye, my friend, and tell me there's a logical reason why you're still alive.
I can't.
Right?
You
shouldn't be here.
I shouldn't be here at all. I mean, all the things that have happened, I think that as I walk through these doors of opportunity, you know, my purpose just expands, right? And my purpose is just to give people some faith and just be of service, right? And even when I doubt myself and went like, listen, I'm married now, right? I have a chapter in my book called Quit Choosing and Get Chosen. And that was my life. When I did all the choosing of what I think Joey should do, it didn't work out right.
It wasn't a good plan.
Listen, it wouldn't. I got my wife chosen, right? My wife chose me. How that happened, right? We're both in school. We're both social workers. I wouldn't have chose anything that I told you. I would have been, right, all these other things. But like social work is not a field that it chooses you.
Right.
And like you serve, and service is for those
you don't
we
go into
serve.
that you don't go into that to get rich,
No,
right?
no.
You just don't.
And that's what I'm saying. Like I'm in a field where like everything I have in my life now, Jim, is a direct result from helping someone else. And it, like I says, is I just walked through the door of opportunity, and it could have ended a lot different. It could have ended at that sidewalk sitting right across the street on Fallowfield Avenue.
Yeah.
But it didn't. It ended with, and it did not end. It continued with an associate degree, working for SPHS, bachelor's degree, 2 licenses, right? I was the 3rd person in PA to get a licensed bachelor's social worker. Then I got my licensed master's, for social worker. Then I got my master's degree. Then I got, my wife saw the hope. My wife stayed and she entered college. Then I started my doctorate. Listen, me and my wife had back-to-back graduations, back-to-back. Like we barely graduated high school.
Yeah.
And it talk about quit choosing and get chosen.
Right.
When you show up and you just pay attention and just do the work, lost dreams awaken.
What that one simple sentence is so powerful, right? Show up, pay attention, and do the work. I mean, and honestly, that's all you have to do.
Yeah.
That is all you have to do. And, this is such a powerful story, and we're going to talk about the book in a minute. And but that had to be. I can't get past. I can get past it, but I just think that one of the there's fascinating pieces of your story. The whole thing is just amazing, but the fact that you persevered, right? Not only did you not give up, you kept showing up, but people didn't give up on you.
No.
The people that you needed stayed.
Yes.
The people that you didn't went away.
Yeah.
Right? Those weren't your people. Those weren't the people you were supposed to be with. Right? The people that you needed you.
Yes.
And they stayed with you. That is powerful. I think that whatever you put out in the world, okay, comes back to you tenfold.
I believe that.
Put love and grace and patience and compassion, and you put that out in the world. It's going to come back. It's going to come back tenfold. And you did that, right? In that fog of addiction and where you were, you didn't forget how to love.
I didn't forget at all.
Right?
It's all about love.
Absolutely. That's why you made it. That's why you made it. So, but just going from that's just that is just so cool that you went from being a almost a failure as an outpatient to working for them, and they came for you.
Yeah,
you didn't go over there with your hat in your hand and say, "Hey, I need a job, please hire me."
I guess I think I'm sure Kelly could correct me. Their CEO Kelly McKevitt. I'm the only one that never put a resume in. I never applied or anything. They came in and I'm fighting them. I mean, my friends could attest, it was like a debate. It was like, well, maybe you can't have an office or anything. We don't need you to go there. It was like a whole big debate. Maybe that's not the right, and I'm really fighting someone that they want to pay me and give me a job, but I can't, like I said, sometimes we don't see the end. And sometimes we just got to just
sometimes it's forest for the trees,
faith.
Right? You can't see the forest for the trees, And so I want to mention a good mutual friend of ours, Jack Cadwaller. And Jack's the one that brought you to the podcast. And when he approached us about doing that show with you and Kelly, and the way he pitched it to Nick and I, the passion that he did it with, Jack's like the rest of us. We've all stumbled, we've all failed, we've all screwed up. Nobody's perfect, right? Nobody's perfect. And Jack and I, Jack's like that little brother I never had, right? And I love him to death. But just the excitement and the passion when he told your story, and he said, "Jane, you're going to love this guy." And I said, well, I knew of you. We didn't know each other. I knew who you were. Our paths had crossed, but I didn't know the depth of this, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, honestly, you, for lack of a better word, you were the junkie that was trying to bring the strip club to Charleroi, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, but once you scratch beneath the surface and you get to know somebody, you have a story. Damn, it's got to be told, right? It's got to be told. So we had a great episode. That was a tremendous show. You and Kelly were fantastic. Jack would have been here tonight, but he had to work a double shift. But you said to me, I'm writing a book. I'm writing this all down in the process.
Hmm.
It's going to come out and it's going to save lives. And we talked and I said, when you have that book's ready, you call me and we're going to have you back.
Yes.
And then one day out of the blue, I get a message from you. Hey, we're ready to go.
Yes.
We're ready to go. And I mean, and honestly, I've been so looking forward to this conversation because I agree with you. I think you wrote a book that can not only change lives, but it can save lives, right? You're living proof that it can happen, right? You're living proof that there is hope where it seems hopeless. There is a light in the dark. I've been there. I know what that dark place is like. I was there, okay? And I know how difficult it is to find that light. And until somebody extends their hand and pulls you forward, right, it's tough to get out of there. So when I was a kid, I want to talk about this title. When I was a kid, one thing my father said to me over and over again, and my dad was that guy. My dad loved all people. He just loved people. He took care of every kid. He was a teacher and a coach. He took care of every kid like they were his own. You know, I always said when I was growing up in Charleroi, the first 18 years of my life, I had a couple of thousand brothers and sisters because my father was that guy. He took care of everybody. And one thing he always said to me, no matter where you go in life, no matter what you do, never leave anyone behind.
Never.
Okay. So when you told me the title of the book, No Addict Left Behind, that really struck a chord with me, right? And it made me think about all of those things. And, you know, I remember people asking my father, and then later in my life, because why are you talking to that guy? Why are you wasting your time with that person? Because that's a person.
Yeah.
You just hit your nail on the head. You know, I'm not wasting my time because that's a person. That's a human being. And if I hadn't been given second chances, I wouldn't be here because I had that same end day moment for a different reason. But I had that same end day moment. And if not for second chances, I wouldn't be here. So what does that mean to you? Where does that come from, that title, No Addict Left Behind?
Well, it comes from iHeart. And I want to tell you the story of how we came and this book came to fruition. You know, as working through SPHS and progressing through there and all the things that I have accomplished in my life. This is actually my third book. You know, the first two books were just, I self-published with Amazon. And those were miracles how that happened too.
Sure.
It was sponsoring a guy. He was an English professor. What was the odds of that? And I was posting on Facebook. He's like, why don't you write a book? I can't write a book. Well, you could write well. And it was, all that learning. And then this one, working at SPHS, one of my colleagues, and he's the chief medical officer at SPHS, along with, he's a traveling doctor, Dr. Scott A. Cook, and he's just a good person. He's someone I admire, right?
Sure.
And always busy saving lives. And our beliefs a parallel, right? We're about not giving up on someone, and I'm going to go a lot in my clinical perspective. When I think of that, not just giving up on someone, there's always some kind of another modality to help someone with. Like, if someone can't get something right, we link them with just something else. But it's about not giving up, Jim, no one. So it was, Scott and I talked a lot, and I was taking a shower. I was up. It was like 3 a.m. I'm taking a shower, and I closed my eyes and I opened them and I had this thought and I says, I need to write a book and I need to put this stuff right. And Dr. Cook and I would always dictate stuff on Messenger. And I jumped out of the shower. I dictated. I said, Scott, we need to write a book. I says, it needs to be about not giving up on someone no matter what. And I sent it to him and it's got to be No Addict Left Behind. And, it came like that. And it was like at 3 a.m. And I remember at like 7 a.m. I went to sleep, slept for a couple hours. And then at 7 a.m., he messaged me back and tells me this is a great idea and everything. And then it was like a Blues Brothers moment, right? We're on a mission from God. And like, this is in the middle of doctorate, right? I'm in school. This is in the middle of my recovery. This is in the middle of my wife's in school, like 5,000 other commitments, right?
Sure.
This is in the middle of like my wife probably wanting to divorce me because, she's like, what are you doing? You've been up for days. Babe, I'm on a mission from God. I got to write this book. And I kept writing. And I kept writing, and I finished the book in several months by just nonstop writing. I was a machine. And, our reason was it's not an autobiography. I wanted to find a way to share and open up my heart and share some of
Mm-hmm.
my stories. And if they are applicable to any population, meaning like, say there's a parent, say there's a child, say there's a
Mm-hmm.
veteran, or maybe most importantly, a professional, meaning
Mm-hmm.
like a maybe there's a clinician or a physician,
Mm-hmm.
where like a lot of that stigma is, maybe they could relate to these stories, and then we could like offer some solutions and data and different stuff, on maybe a clinical perspective.
Yeah.
And Dr. Cook and I went to work and we offered that. And then I wanted to take it a little bit further, Jim. And I says, how could a parent relate even more? And how could a kid relate even more? I'm gonna go interview my mom. And I'm going to put her in the book. And I'm going to give parents a first person perspective
Mm-hmm.
of a child in addiction and how she learned tools like discernment and solutions, how to love a kid from a distance, but not give up and
Right.
not leave their son behind.
Right.
And that's what we did. And we threw it all in there, right? And wrapped it all up and just said, here to the world. And we did it. And like I said, as Dr. Cook gives that medical piece,
Mm-hmm.
I give a lot of the social work and the solutions. I give the family. My mom gives some of the family solutions
Sure.
along with and that I also give kids. I gave a lot of the perspective where, my experience, I mean, it's extremely emotional. So when someone reads it, I mean, it's just so emotional when it comes to a child. It's when I have a moment when I, kind of like abandoned my son, and the disease is yelling at me, and I wanted to spend time with him, but the disease, just like that drill sergeant at my last moment,
Yeah.
there's no time and there's no
Mm-hmm.
promises in addiction. There's just
Right.
nothing. And I just wanted to give that to the world, a way to people identify with something that, I don't believe anybody's ever done in this way.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just like the season of my life. And when this door of opportunity opened, when I knew that my purpose shifted and I knew that I had to be of service on this platform, I knew it had to be done.
Right. Right. And listen, young man, I'm going to tell you something. What you are doing is a ministry. This is your ministry, right?
Yeah.
It's more than a mission. It's more than a message that you're sending out there. It's a ministry. That's huge. That's a powerful thing. You have a platform, a bully pulpit of sorts.
Hmm.
Okay. But it comes from a place of credibility because you lived it,
Yes.
So the person who is actively an addict,
Hmm.
right? Who's in active addiction, that person can be saved from this. They will get from this book. I'm not going to give up. Joey did it. I can do it. I'm not
Yeah.
going to give up. I'm going to reach out and ask for help, right? The parent who's terrified of losing their child and doesn't know they're on the edge won't give up,
Yes.
right? The doctor,
Yeah.
Physicians, the clinical community may look at that junkie that comes into the ER a little bit differently once they read this book.
Yes. And that, see, that part of the book, Jim, is so important because, I wanted to just give the physicians, to give the ER staff as a whole, the most tangible experience so they could see.
Mm-hmm.
When I overdosed and ended up in the ER, I gave that whole experience. And like at the end of it, I said, I didn't stay clean that day,
Right.
but I heard being called a junkie, and that stigma stung.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
and that's real to a person in recovery.
Mm-hmm.
It just, it just like draws a line in the sand that says you shall not pass when you
Right.
have that stigma. And it just drove me back in that dark corner. So listen, addicts, parents of addicts, physicians, it just doesn't matter like who you are. This stuff in this book applies.
Mm-hmm.
And words hurt.
Absolutely.
We hear that like sticks and stones or break that. That's I don't believe
Right.
in that. Words hurt.
Absolutely.
And like no matter where you're at in your life, like listen, I it was a perfect storm.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just more fuel for that storm, right? However you say it. And
No, you're exactly right. And one thing that we would be remiss if we didn't touch on just a little bit deeper
Mhm.
is the role of law enforcement
Mm.
in addiction and recovery. Okay, so obviously, you know, y- at the very superficial level,
Mhm.
you have the police, you have the addicts. Okay, you have the dealers and the addicts, and
Yes.
they're on opposite sides. They're at war with each other, right?
Mhm.
The police, their mission, their purpose is to stop this, to stop drugs.
Mhm.
This, deal. But when you think about going back to that pivotal day, your end day. Okay. Let's talk about Eric Porter for a minute. Chief Porter, good friend of both of ours, right?
Yes.
As a police officer, he could have reacted in a lot of different ways, right? He could have seen you as that junkie, as this thief who just came in, who just stole someone else's money, right? Who robbed the business, somebody that's out there trying to make a living and make ends meet. He could have treated you like a thief. He could have treated you like a junkie. He could have treated you like any common criminal. But what did he do? He hugged you.
He gave me hope.
He gave you hope. When you think about what police officers all over the country, what they deal with now, the perception of law enforcement, and some of it's deserved, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Some of that is earned.
Yeah.
Okay. There are bad policemen, just like they're bad. There's good and bad in every profession, every walk of life. But when you don't hear those stories, you don't hear these Eric Porter, Joey Pagano story, right? And people need to hear that, because had Eric treated you differently in that moment, this could have never happened. This could have went a completely different direction, right? You could have got lost in the system and become more bitter and got deeper into addiction and into use.
And that was happened sometimes.
Yeah.
I tell you what, I'm definitely grateful for Eric. And the truth is, just people sometimes they miss the message because they're too busy looking for the mess. And that's kind of what happens a lot. See, I work hand in hand today. I'm a licensed social worker. I'm a supervisor, all these other roles. And I work hand in hand with, right now I'm working in Greene County. I work right with the probation. They're amazing, right? We work with the county, and like my role is to help them see, not that they don't, but sometimes you get the Joey Pagano's an active addiction. You get we can't take this guy. He's not going to get it. This is Joey can't get right?
Joey can't get right.
Like this is his 25th time. He's not going to stay clean, right? Yeah. And then it is my role to help them see, like, listen, like I got clean on the 26th time. If you would have given up, right? It's about just giving people their time and not giving up, right? And sometimes they got to go to jail. Right here, I had to go to jail. I had to be. But in a way, how it happened, that moment with Eric, right? He just showed me that I was still a person.
You're still a human being.
And he didn't give up on me. It's about Jim, no human left behind. Right. And it's about just not giving up on people. Because there's still value there.
There's still value in you at the lowest point. At the lowest point of my life, okay, it took somebody to show me that there was still value in me. And I was worth saving, just like he did that with you and others along the way. But at that pivotal point in his role in law enforcement, that could have changed the entire dynamic of where you went from there.
It could have. So, and when you get charges and that happens and that collateral damage of addiction, listen, it's not a lost cause. Listen, I couldn't dream, I couldn't make up the stuff. It's so amazing, my life. And, even when I had those charges and I felt I'll never get a job or anything. Listen, I petitioned for a governor's pardon and I worked on it and I got a governor's pardon. Right. And Lieutenant Governor Fetterman, I remember I was on there, it was virtual, it was during the pandemic and I got pardoned. And then Governor Wolf signed off. Like, listen, and then my friends even joke with me. They said, who's the cleanest person in the valley? That's what Lee'll tell me. But it's true. It's true. Listen, you just show up and do the work. Look, imagine that story. Now I have no record, not even a speeding ticket, Jim. They erased everything. Listen. And now, I was talking to my wife the other day and we were talking about how another example of that same scenario is, so I'm going to school and I'm accumulating all these loans. And I says, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm in my doctorate. That's almost like $250,000. So what do? I just keep putting in the work and show up. I look online. There's a DDAP, Department of Drug and Alcohol Programs, loan forgiveness. And I said, maybe I'll just apply for that. So I apply and get it. They forgave 90% of all my loans, immediately for working in this field. Now it was listen, this is what the world told me. Go to school, right? Stay clean, keep getting degrees. We're going to pay off your college and you're not going to have a record. How you like them apples?
Yeah.
right? And that's kind of like, that's what happened. Like, it's...
You couldn't write this script in
I
Hollywood
couldn't.
for a movie.
I
You
couldn't
write this script.
I couldn't. I wouldn't have picked the wife I have, right? She found me. I wouldn't have worked at I wouldn't have been at Club Serenity, but I expected a miracle, and I realized I was the miracle.
Right.
I wouldn't have went to school because I barely graduated high school.
Yep.
But once again, if I just show up, and soon I'll be Dr. Pagano next March, right? Because like I says, you know, I it's just amazing, and it gives me chills. And sometimes, like, you know, sometimes I can't go to sleep at night, and I'll just, you know, I'll wake up and just like cry for a minute and just like realize like sometimes I'm just right where I belong, Jim.
Mhm.
And like you wonder why I write this book, because there's still people out there that need saved.
Yeah.
And there's still people living in them dark corners.
Yep.
And I'm going to save as many lives as I can till they bury me in the ground.
There you
And
go.
I get to know that my kids know that I did the best I could, and
Mhm.
I saved as many people as I can. And nobody knows that, like, when they think of Joey Pagano, my grandfather who had the shoe store, Joey Pagano, that's why I
Yeah.
go by Joey. I love that because he was Joey P.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
I
yeah.
love that. And he's going to be just up there wherever he's at. And he's going to say that my grandson did the best he could.
He's proud of you, man.
He is.
There's no doubt. You know, we're all proud of you. And you know, this community is better because you're a part of it. You and Lee both.
Yes.
Okay, you and Lee both in Club Serenity, and what you do to the community, whether it's Shawry, Menneson, wherever you guys go from here, you bring value. You bring value to human beings who, in most cases, in almost 100% of the cases, don't see value in their lives anymore, right? You give hope. And that's your ministry. Your ministry is hope.
Everybody deserves a second chance. And like I said, don't judge a book by its cover. You know, it's
Mhm.
just sometimes, you know, I got clean my 26th time, you know, and just don't give
That's
up
amazing.
on someone.
That's amazing.
Don't give up on someone. Listen, we're having a huge event because like I says,
Let's talk about the event.
Yeah, we're having a huge event on August 20th. It's going to be at Menneson Park. Okay.
At the amphitheater,
Yeah,
right?
at the amphitheater. We're going to have behavioral health providers, physical health providers, music acts, harm reduction tents, central outreach. We're doing blood work.
Okay.
And it's about just reducing the stigma. And it is called the Rock for Recovery.
Nice.
Right?
And you
it's
got
just-
you got Scott Blasey from
Yeah.
the Clarks. That's a big
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
act, man.
I know.
Seriously, that's
I
not,
know.
That's not like your local guy that's down in the corner, around the
Hey,
corner. You
yeah,
know.
we'll have Scott Blasey from the Clarks. We'll have Kalichi, which is a recovery rapper.
Yep.
You know, he's big. And we just have a lot of people going to be there and just in the spirit of recovery. And listen, you'll have Narcan there. They'll
Mhm.
have resource, just anything you could think of. And we're hoping to pack it, and we're hoping to do this annually. And it's going to, you know, be backed by Club Serenity, and just hopefully everybody could be there. Because I'll be signing books there. I'll be selling books there.
Okay.
And it's just about like the takeaway. It's just, you know, continue being of service. Continue not giving up on people, no
Right.
matter what. You never know who anybody could be.
Sure.
If you just give them
Sure.
a chance.
Absolutely. So you're marketing the event on
Yes.
social media.
Yes.
So if somebody wants to get in touch with Club Serenity, how do they do that? How does the average person who's out there, who's struggling, who's watching this and wants to, you know, I want to talk to this guy. I want to see these guys. How do they get in touch with you?
Well, you can call the president, Mark St. Cyr, and you could talk to him, the vice president, Lee Roberts, Mindy McCloy, the secretary, and you could just get hold of any
Club
of
Serenity
them.
has a website.
Yes, I believe it's clubserenityinc.com, or it's, you know, you'll find it on there. Or you could just come down. It's 702 Fallowfield Avenue, Charleroi, PA 15022. You can come
Okay.
down. I know they have, you know, different meetings there. They have resources, and also, you know, if you're stuck in addiction or anything, you know, where I work, we have the SPHS Center of Excellence.
That's where I was going next.
Yeah. If you need immediate treatment or anything, we have a COE on-call referral line. It is 1-888-810-8595. So you can get hold of us at any time, 24/7, 365.
That is awesome, man. Listen, again, thank you, brother. I
Yes.
appreciate it, man.